Imagine waking up in Riyadh. You train for 2 hours, score twice in a friendly against a team half your age, and by the time you're back in the car, you've already made more money than most people make in 5 years. 4 million euros a week, $670,000 a day, before you've even touched a sponsorship deal, an equity stake, or a hotel bearing your own initials. That's the number attached to Cristiano Ronaldo's contract with Al-Nassr, reportedly the richest deal in the history of professional sport. Now, here's the part that should actually stop you. That salary, the biggest in the history of team sports, is not even the most interesting thing about his finances. It's not even, by some measures, the part of his fortune that's growing fastest. And it's the one part of the whole empire that's guaranteed to disappear the day he stops playing. You'd assume the money is the football. It has to be, right? He's the highest paid athlete on the planet, 4 years running, an estimated $300 million in the last 12 months alone. And it's true that the wage itself is enormous, arguably the largest annual playing salary any athlete in team sports has ever earned. But strip away the headline salary number, and you find something almost every superstar athlete eventually discovers. A wage, no matter how enormous, is still just a wage. It ends when the contract ends. It's taxed, or in Ronaldo's case in Saudi Arabia, conveniently not taxed at all. And it depends entirely on one asset, still being able to run onto a pitch at 41 years old. You'd assume the biggest number on the page is the whole story. Actually, it's closer to the entry fee, the thing that buys attention, which is then converted into something far more durable. What actually makes Cristiano Ronaldo one of the first team sport athletes in history to cross $1 billion in net worth isn't the size of the paycheck. It's what he built around it.
So let's go back to where the machine actually started. In 2003, an 18-year-old winger from Madeira signed for Manchester United in a deal worth roughly £12 million, a transfer fee that went almost entirely to Sporting Lisbon, the club that developed him. Ronaldo himself, at that age, had almost no leverage. He took the wage he was offered. He was, financially speaking, exactly what every young athlete is at the start: labor, not capital. That gap between the fee a club can extract from your talent and the fee you can extract for yourself is the entire story of the next 20 years. Everything Ronaldo has built since has been about closing it. Before we get to where the money actually lives now, it's worth pausing on the middle of the story, because the leverage didn't arrive overnight. Ronaldo spent 6 seasons at Manchester United, turning himself from a promising winger into a Ballon d'Or winner. And in 2009, Real Madrid paid what was then a world record transfer fee, roughly 94 million euros, to bring him to Spain. That fee matters, because for the first time, it wasn't just Ronaldo's wage going up. It was the market publicly pricing him as an asset worth fighting over. That's the moment leverage flips. Instead of a club deciding what a young player is worth, the player has become scarce enough that clubs bid against each other for the right to pay him. Everything commercial that follows, the Nike deal, the equity stakes, the hotel empire, depends on that shift having happened first.
Here's where the real income actually lives today. And it's spread across categories most fans never think about. First, there's the wage itself. Call it $200 to $245 million a year from Al-Nassr, according to reporting on his 2025 contract extension. Tax-free under Saudi law, which levies no personal income tax at all. Put plainly, a European club paying an identical gross wage would see Ronaldo lose something like 45 to 50% of it to tax before it ever reached his account. Same number on paper, a very different number in the bank. Second, there's equity. As part of that same 2025 deal, Ronaldo reportedly received a 15% ownership stake in Al-Nassr itself, worth tens of millions on paper. The difference between being paid by a club and owning a piece of one. A wage is rent for your labor this season. Equity is a claim on whatever the whole enterprise turns out to be worth, whether or not you personally kick a ball tomorrow. Third, there's Nike, merchandise Nike sells. Fourth, there's social media, which for Ronaldo functions less like a hobby and more like a distribution company. Over 600 million Instagram followers, the single most followed account on the platform, reportedly commanding $2.5 to $3.5 million for one sponsored post. And fifth, the newest, fastest growing layer, YouTube. He launched a channel in late 2024 that became the fastest in history to reach 50 million subscribers, and by 2026 had crossed roughly 78 million, reportedly generating an estimated $10 million a year in high-margin ad revenue, on top of long-running partnerships with brands like Herbalife and Clear. 5 separate rivers, each one able to keep flowing even on a day he doesn't play a single minute of football.
Now picture the ownership side of the ledger, because this is where footballer quietly turns into holding company. Ronaldo isn't just a face renting itself out for endorsement checks. He owns pieces of the businesses that carry his name. CR7 Hotels is a 50-50 joint venture with Portugal's Pestana Group, with properties already open in Lisbon, Madrid, Marrakesh, New York, and his home city of Funchal, and a flagship Riyadh property reportedly in the works, timed to ride what's being called the Ronaldo effect on Saudi tourism. Notice the structure. He's not just licensing his name to someone else's hotel chain for a flat fee. He's a 50% owner, meaning he shares directly in every room booked every year for as long as the hotels operate, long after he's stopped playing football entirely. Alongside that sits a CR7 footwear and underwear line, a fragrance business, and stakes in fitness and wellness ventures. The distinction matters. But no empire this size gets built without at least one real expensive lesson, and Ronaldo's came from Spain. Spanish prosecutors alleged that between 2011 and 2014, while he played for Real Madrid, his image rights income, the money paid specifically for the commercial use of his name and likeness, separate from his club salary, was routed through shell companies based outside Spain, in places like the British Virgin Islands and Ireland, in a structure designed to reduce what was owed to Spanish tax authorities. Prosecutors put the disputed amount at around 14.7 million euros. Ronaldo denied wrongdoing throughout the process, but in 2018 he agreed to a settlement, and in January 2019 he formally pleaded guilty, accepting a fine and back payments totaling roughly 18.8 million euros, about $21 million, alongside a suspended prison sentence, the standard outcome for first-time offenders under Spanish law, when the term is under 2 years. He wasn't alone. Other elite footballers in Spain, including Lionel Messi, settled similar cases around the same period after Spain tightened the rules governing how foreign athletes could structure their image rights earnings. Think of it as the cost of building an international financial structure without enough guardrails. The same complexity that lets you route income efficiently across borders is exactly what tax authorities go looking for first. It's a useful reminder for anyone building a business empire around a personal brand. The more entities, the more jurisdictions, the more places for a mistake, intentional or not, to turn expensive.
Here's the loop that makes all of this compound instead of just add up. Fame drives attention. Attention drives brand value. The willingness of Nike, of hotel groups, of millions of Instagram followers to pay a premium just to be near the name. Brand value funds and legitimizes new ventures. Hotels, fragrances, a media channel. And those ventures, in turn, generate new headlines, new content, new reasons for the algorithm to keep putting Ronaldo in front of people who've never seen him kick a ball.
A teenager scrolling YouTube shorts who couldn't name a single Al-Nassr teammate can still tell you who Ronaldo is, and that recognition alone is worth money to a sponsor. Each piece reinforces the next, which is exactly why his career earnings, reportedly already past $1 billion, with some estimates suggesting he'll clear $2 billion by the time he retires, dwarf what any single wage, however record-breaking, could ever produce on its own. Picture it like a dam and several rivers feeding into the same reservoir. The salary is the biggest single river, but cut it off entirely and the reservoir still fills, just more slowly, from the hotels, the equity, the royalties, and the following. If you want a single moment that captures the whole arc, look at the stretch from 2022 into 2025. In November 2022, with Manchester United struggling and Ronaldo largely benched, he gave an explosive interview to Piers Morgan, saying he felt betrayed by the club. Days later, with the World Cup about to start in Qatar, the club and player mutually agreed to terminate his contract. For a 37-year-old, widely assumed to be nearing the end of his career, cut loose by one of the biggest clubs on earth in the middle of a season, it looked like the moment the machine might finally slow down. Instead, within weeks, he signed with Al-Nassr in Saudi Arabia on what was then already a record-breaking package. Over the following 2.5 years, he kept scoring at an elite rate, kept the sponsorships flowing, kept adding to the hotel portfolio and the social following, and by June 2025, at 40 years old, he extended that Saudi contract again, a deal reportedly worth up to $675 million across 2 years, the richest contract in the history of professional sport. That same month, by Forbes' estimate, his net worth crossed into 11-figure territory for the first time, making him one of only a handful of active athletes, alongside names like LeBron James and Tiger Woods, ever to appear on a global billionaires list. The lesson isn't that he got lucky twice. It's that by 2022, his income no longer depended on any single club believing in him. The hotels, the Nike deal, the equity, the following, they were already running quietly in the background the entire time. Manchester United could let him go. His financial engine couldn't. So what's the bull case, and what's the bear case? Bull case, the empire keeps compounding well past retirement. Nike is a lifetime deal, not a playing career deal, so that income doesn't stop the day he hangs up his boots. The hotels don't need him to score goals, they need rooms booked. The YouTube channel and the 600 million plus followers are an audience he now owns directly, not one he's renting from a broadcaster. And that direct relationship with an audience is arguably more durable than any single contract, because other athletes turned business people, David Beckham among them, have already shown that a well-run post-career brand can keep generating real money for decades after the final match. On the bull case, retirement doesn't shrink the empire. It just removes the one part of it, the wage, that was always going to expire anyway. Bear case. Almost everything underneath the empire still traces back to one perishable asset: Ronaldo's continued global relevance. Sponsors pay premiums for attention, and attention for any athlete, however historic, eventually declines the way it does for every athlete who has ever lived. If the follower engagement fades, if the highlight reel moments dry up, if a 40-something Ronaldo starts generating more headlines about decline than about goals, the hotel brand and the sponsorship rate cards don't evaporate overnight, but the premium multiple attached to the CR7 name almost certainly shrinks. There's also the more mundane risk the tax case exposed. The more entities, jurisdictions, and structures an empire like this operates across, the more exposure there is to a regulator, in any country, deciding a piece of it was arranged too cleverly. The entire structure is built to survive retirement. It was never built to survive irrelevance, or to survive another expensive misstep with a tax authority. Which is really the whole reframe. Cristiano Ronaldo is not, financially speaking, a footballer who happens to have some side deals. He is closer to a diversified holding company, hotels, apparel, media, equity, sponsorship, that happens to also play, for now, at the very highest level of professional football. Take away the wage entirely, and the empire still runs. Take away the fame that built the empire in the first place, and the wage was never really the point. So picture that same morning in Riyadh one more time. The training session, the 2 goals, the drive home. Except now imagine it's 20 years from now. The boots are long retired, and the money is still arriving anyway. That's not a footballer's paycheck. That's a business that happened to be run, for a while, by one of the best footballers who ever lived.